Why, hello. I'm Andy, and I'm here in New York City, specifically at Times Square 42nd Street Station, the busiest station in the entire New York City subway system. Now, while millions of riders use this system every single day, many may not realize that they're walking and riding through one of New York's largest public art galleries.
That's right. The MTA's Arts and Design program has over 250 pieces of permanent artwork in the New York City subway across all 5 boroughs, with more along the MTA's commuter rail lines. While we can't show you all 250 plus works of art, in today's video we will show you a sampling of some of the most unique and a few of our favorite pieces in the system, some of which you might not have noticed during your last journey on the New York City subway.
So join me, ride with me, and let's begin this journey.
Today, we're exploring secret art of the New York City subway. While the New York City subway has included art-like design elements since its founding, the official MTA Arts and Design program started in 1985 as the MTA began to rehabilitate stations across the system. As stations get rehabilitated through MTA's capital program, up to 1% of those funds can go towards commissioning and installing station artwork. The program has focused on installing artwork that can speak to local communities, connect to history, or simply delight riders on an otherwise mundane commute. It's been described by both the MTA and the press as New York's underground art museum, complete with a digital app to guide you around the system. And with that, it's time to begin our tour of the New York City subway art, back at its busiest station.
So the first piece of artwork that we'll look at is actually right here in Times Square in the main concourse, and specifically, it's right above me.
This giant mural with a yellow bullet train is the 2002 work Times Square Mural by Roy Lichtenstein, a New York City native who is one of the leading figures of the pop art movement. The mural mixes both historical callouts and futuristic motifs. Look closely and you'll notice references to the disused City Hall station and the 1939 and 1964 New York World's Fairs.
Now that was by far not the only piece of artwork here in Times Square Station. If you follow me along this wall of glass blocks, you'll find a series of embedded squares that make up the 2005 artwork by Tony Buonagurio called Times Square Times 35 Times. Say that 35 times fast.
The scenes inside these blocks, which are found throughout the station, depict life around this part of Midtown Manhattan. Look closely and you'll find references to street life, the theater district, and of course, the famous New Year's celebrations that take place right above our heads here in Times Square.
And speaking of New Year's, that's the focus of our next piece of Times Square Station art, Revelers, a 2008 series of mosaics by Jane Dixon.
You can see these life-size mosaics of people ringing in the new year throughout the Times Square station. Dixon created about 70 different mosaic characters. But there's even more art in the Times Square station if you know where to look. The mezzanine above the N, Q, R, and W train platforms features New York in Transit by Jacob Lawrence, a mural that evokes scenes of city life as seen from an elevated train. Lawrence was a renowned artist known for his portrayal of African American historical subjects and contemporary life. Finished in 2001, this mural was his last public artwork. But before we move on to our next station, let's quickly head upstairs to Times Square itself for one more piece of subway art.
So we've made it to Times Square, where we're actually in the pedestrian island between 45th and 46th Street along Broadway, where you come to this somewhat unremarkable subway grate, and if you listen closely, you'll hear some sort of vibrating humming noise in addition to the usual subway noise. Now let's get down a little closer. If you can hear this too, this isn't part of the subway. This is actually also an art installation, a 1977 work by Max Neuhaus called Times Square. And it's for everyone to listen to among all the hubbub and other noises that you can find here at Times Square.
And heading back underground, we have to mention this somewhat cryptic poem you'll find when transferring from the ACE trains or the Port Authority bus terminal to the rest of the Times Square station. If you look up as you walk down the connecting passageway, you'll read the following. Overslept, so tired. If late, get fired. Why bother? Why the pain? Just go home. Do it again. The poem is officially called The Commuter's Lament / A Close Shave by Norman B. Culp and has been depressing New York City commuters since it was first installed in 1991. The poem is actually a parody of a series of ads by the Burma Shave Company, a shaving cream company that was most famous for installing roadside ads that also had to be read sequentially. Now it's finally time to leave the Times Square station complex and take the A train south to our next piece of artwork.
We're here at 14th Street, 8th Avenue station on the A, C, E, and L trains, where scattered throughout the station you might have noticed these small bronze sculptures here. Now, these sculptures are the 2001 work by Tom Artenis called Life Underground.
These playful bronze figures cover everything from New York City myths to critiques of class and capitalism to everyday life on the subway. Artenis was commissioned to create only 20 bronze figures, but became so obsessed with the project that he ended up delivering over 100. So the next time you're in the 14th Street 8th Avenue station, keep your eyes peeled because some of these little figures are hiding in some unexpected places. From here, we take the L train to the 6th train downtown, in one of New York City's oldest subway stations.
We're here at Astor Place on the 6th train, one of the original IRT subway line stations, where you can find throughout the station beavers, which are here to commemorate John Jacob Astor, the namesake of Astor Place, who made his fortune in the beaver fur trade. However, that is not why we're actually here. We're here to look at Milton Glaser, who was very well known for the I Heart New York logos, 1986 piece called Untitled, which is a modernist take on the historic surroundings. All of this work you can also find throughout the station itself. Now, one more fun fact, the station also means a lot to me because behind what were these sort of abandoned looking walls was once a Kmart where I once bought a comforter. Now, moving from the oldest part of the subway to the newest part of the subway, we're in the 2nd Avenue subway, specifically on the Q train station at 72nd Street, where you can find some great artwork from 2017.
At 72nd Street, you'll find Vic Muniz's Perfect Strangers. Muniz photographed more than 36 everyday New Yorkers for this piece, with the portraits transferred to mosaic and glass, with these portraits scattered throughout the station's mezzanine.
Now, there's one more perfect stranger that you may not have noticed at 72nd Street Station, and it's best seen from the elevators at the 72nd Street side.
At 86th Street on the Q train, you'll find Subway Portraits by Chuck Close. Close, who sadly passed away in 2021, was famous for his large-scale portraits, sometimes photorealistic, sometimes abstract. For our next artwork, we'll continue uptown to 125th Street Station, of course not in the 2nd Avenue subway, at least not yet, but on the Lexington Avenue line.
We're here at 125th Street Station on the 456 train to look at MTA's first official arts and design commission in the entire subway system. That's Houston Conwell's 1986 The Open Secret, which are these giant bronze embedded triangles here on the mezzanine level of 125th Street right before the platforms. Now, these triangles really merit a closer look as there's a lot of hidden stuff within the triangles themselves, and they serve as time capsules to life in Harlem in the 1980s.
From here, we'll head directly west to a different 125th Street station with another great art installation. Anyone who's read the children's book Tar Beach by Faith Ringgold about a girl who flies over the George Washington Bridge will recognize a similar art style in the 125th Street station on the 2 and 3 trains. Here, in 1996, Ringgold created Flying Home, Harlem Heroes and Heroines, Downtown and Uptown. Ringgold, a Harlem native herself, depicts famous residents of Harlem flying, including singer and pianist Dinah Washington, singer Billie Holiday, writers and poets like Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston, and civil rights leaders like Mary McLeod Bethune, Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X, who also happens to be the namesake of the boulevard above the station. And since we're already in Upper Manhattan, we'll continue northward into the Bronx, specifically to the busy shopping street of Fordham Road, to check out another great piece of arts in transit.
We're here at Fordham Road Station on the 4 train to look at a 2005 piece of artwork by Moses Ross called Patria Sana, Wholesome Land, a series of laminated glass panels, that's a more modern form of stained glass, that depict the various things that you can buy along the busy commercial street of Fordham Road. Everything from a hat to an umbrella, which we could really use given how rainy it is outside, but many things really depicting the vibrancy, some of the joyousness. Look at how the figures are dancing of this community, of this corridor here at Fordham Road.
From Fordham Road, we'll head south to 161st Street Yankee Stadium station on the B, D, and 4 trains, where you'll find the two related works, Wall Slide by Vito Acconci and Room of Tranquility by Helene Brandt, which both aim to push and peel away the tile walls of the station to reveal, in the case of Wall Slide, the materials underneath, and in the case of Room of Tranquility, to reveal peaceful and natural landscapes above ground. Heading south from the Bronx to the Upper West Side, we find original artwork by Yoko Ono in the 72nd Street station on the B and C trains. Titled Sky, Ono created this piece in 2018 with the goal of bringing the sky underground. The words remember, dream, or imagine peace float in an almost handwritten way across the mosaics. For some additional somber context, the 72nd Street station is just steps from the Dakota apartment building, where Ono lived and where her late husband, John Lennon, was killed in 1980. But to brighten the mood, we'll head south to a whimsical and canine-related station artwork.
Dog lovers aren't going to want to miss 23rd Street Station on the F and M trains, because it's here you can find the 2018 mosaic by William Wegman called Stationary Figures, which depict his favorite Weimaraner dogs. William Wegman's work can also be found in the DC Metro at LaFont Plaza, where you can find a very similar subject.
From here, we'll take the F train northeast to a piece that straddles the line between an artwork and an exhibition.
Now, you might have taken the subway to 5th Avenue 53rd Street Station to visit the Museum of Modern Art, but you don't even have to leave the station to find the MoMA and MTA collaboration. It's called The Subway, designed for a modern icon, and walks you through the history of the modernist graphic design and wayfinding that you can find throughout the entire subway system. Now, this 2019 work is one of my favorites because I'm personally interested in wayfinding and graphic design, and frankly, I just find this whole exhibition really cool.
Continuing east into Queens, we'll find a station with a powerful mosaic tying this borough and Manhattan together.
We're here at Queens Plaza on the EF and R trains, where you can find the 2005 work Look Up, Not Down by Ellen Harvey, a work that is a series of mosaics that show the view above the station if one were to gaze upwards, with the goal of the artwork celebrating the skyline of New York City, particularly at a time when it was made in the wake of 9/11, when thinking of the skyline meant thinking of loss. Now, these mosaics also serve as a double purpose, given that they were made in 2005, and now that the Queens and Manhattan skylines look so different, they really serve as sort of a time capsule to that era.
And from Queens, we'll head down to Brooklyn for 2 more stations with very unique art installations.
We're here at Eastern Parkway-Brooklyn Museum Station, where you can find a very unique installation that was done in collaboration with, of course, the Brooklyn Museum that's above us. Now, this installation doesn't really have a name because it's more of an exhibition than a single piece of artwork. In 2004, when the station was being renovated, the Brooklyn Museum, from its collections, donated 78 pieces of decorative architectural elements, all of which had come from demolished New York City buildings. During that renovation, these architectural elements were then embedded into the walls of the station. This was modeled after a similar collaboration between the Louvre and the Paris Metro. And today, you can find these wonderful architectural elements sprucing up the Eastern Parkway Brooklyn Museum Station.
Heading back towards Manhattan, we're at DeKalb Avenue Station ready to board a Manhattan-bound Q train, and by doing so, we'll get to see one of ours and even the public's favorite pieces of art on the subway. If you look out of the right-hand side window of a Manhattan-bound B or Q train, you'll see an animated movie that plays in the tunnel. This is the 1980 installation Mass Transiscope by Bill Brand. Mass Transiscope was first installed by Brand in 1980 and uses 228 stationary hand-painted panels that create the illusion of a motion picture when the moving train passes by. Mass Transiscope is situated in the abandoned Myrtle Avenue subway station between DeKalb Avenue and the Manhattan Bridge. It's a great way to turn an abandoned piece of infrastructure into a subway asset that can delight riders as they head into Manhattan. And back in Manhattan, we're headed south towards Bowling Green, as our next station artwork is a little more far-flung than what we've covered so far.
MTA's official Arts and Design Arts and Transit program covers all 5 boroughs, and that includes the Staten Island Railway. So you better believe we're off on the Staten Island Ferry to go check it out.
we've made it to New Dorp Station, where you can find Creeping On Where Time Has Been, a 2023 series of metal and glass panels from Carrie Shaheen, who was born and raised on Staten Island. The various panels highlight historic architecture in the borough and are meant to call back to a Staten Island before the suburbanization sprawl of the 1960s. The title of the work, Creeping On Where Time Has Been, is pulled from the Charles Dickens poem The Ivy Green, noting how while many man-made developments have grown throughout the borough, nature will always persist. And with that, we headed back to the ferry terminal at St. George. And after riding the ferry back to Lower Manhattan, it's time for one last piece of subway art.
Now, the final piece of artwork that we want to show you isn't actually part of the Arts and Design's official program. In fact, it's here on the New York City Sidewalk in Soho on 110 Green Street between Prince and Spring Street. It's called Subway Map Floating on the New York City Sidewalk, a 1985 work by Francois Schein, a Belgian artist who here evokes the New York City subway diagram with some artistic liberties, with all these lines embedded into the sidewalk with little lights that light up at night marking different station locations. It's a wonderful thing to find, and it's open to all the public to see if you come to Soho. And so there you have it. We've been able to show you just some of our favorite pieces of New York City subway artwork. But of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more artwork throughout the New York City subway. You couldn't cover it in one video. You probably couldn't cover it in even 10 videos. So we encourage you all to go explore the New York City subway and let us know your favorite piece of New York City subway artwork in the comments below. You know, arts in transit is such a great idea, whether in New York City or around the world. It connects communities, it brightens up people's commutes, and everything in between. And with that, thank you so much for watching. I'm Andy, and until the next time, I'll see you on the subway.